It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody! It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
And Les Webster.
Hello all.
How are you guys doing?
Tired, but otherwise fine.
Doing pretty good. And you?
Doing alright. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, for this week for me, it's always fun when you get one of those neat little boxes in the mail and you recognize it as something from a Kickstarter campaign.
Yay!
So a couple of weeks ago, I got my Blu-ray copy of The Chair.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, this is, if we haven't talked about it enough, it is the movie made from the Alterna Comics graphic novel by Peter Simetti. And this movie, I had a chance to watch it. Wow. It's dark.
Well, the story was dark, so yeah.
It is wow. Yeah, it was a little hard to watch. It was really good, but it was tough to watch. It was brutal. Especially the first half. It was actually a little weird because I admit, like I think I talked about this in the last couple of weeks. I don't always watch a whole movie all the way through. I will sometimes stop in the middle and then wait a day or two and go back to it, just because it's sometimes even an hour and a half movie is just too much for my brain to process at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped this puppy right at the 45-minute mark. I think it runs 84 minutes or something like that. And that was apparently right at the point where there's a shift in the style of the movie. It's an interesting thing, and I didn't time this on it was completely unintentional, but so I start watching this movie and it's like a different movie from that point on. It was a little weird, but it added to the whole unsettling feel of the thing. Mm-hmm. And it kind of got away from the really gruesome stuff at that point and got a little more psychological at that point, which was really cool. I like I said, I really like the movie. It's really good, but yeah, it's not rated. I would have been interesting to see what had happened if they had, for some strange reason, put this into the MPAA to get a rating. They didn't have to the way it was released, but yeah, it's definitely, I definitely enjoyed it.
Very cool.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
You should have got in on the Kickstarter, man.
You are very true about that.
I can also loan it to you if you want.
I will get it from you soon.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate the thought too.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm wanting to check that one out myself. So, all right, Les, how about you?
Well, I was pretty movie intensive this weekend myself. I went to a theater here that showed 10 hours of fright movies. They were in a theme. They were all number 2s of the series. So I got to see things like Psycho 2, House 2, The Second Story. I'm trying to think of the others. There was one called Zombie, and I explained to Thomas that this was an Italian writer and director, and he released a movie called Zombie, Z-O-M-B-I, and this one was the sequel, Z-O-M-B-I-E. It was fun to sit there and watch these 5 movies, and laugh at parts of them, cringe at parts of them, and just shake your head going, why do I even want to remember that I saw this? Because they were not good movies to begin with. We've discussed it, Thomas and I have talked about it. Psycho 2 is pretty good. That's with Vera Miles, Anthony Perkins, and Meg Tilly among their actors. And you have some really good acting from Robert Loggia and Dennis Franz. It was a fun 10 hours. And you had breaks between movies, so you could go to the restroom or make a phone call, whatever you needed to do.
They gave you a free phone call?
Yes. Yeah. I made a mistake, and instead of calling my lawyer, I called for a pizza.
Ooh.
But it was really interesting how they ran it, and they had one of the movies, Unborn #2, which was a straight-to-video movie. So that was very enticing to me. But if given the chance, I would do it again.
With the same movies?
No.
Yeah, you would.
I'm sure by next year they'll come up with some different ones. So I'll wait.
There's a few.
Yeah, there's a few sequels.
Mediocre sequels out there.
Yeah.
Mediocre horror sequels.
Yeah, as Les said, we had discussed this earlier, and I'm a big fan of Psycho 2 because they did something that shouldn't have worked. The first film was perfect, and it's like there's no way you can follow up, and they did a rather good job and made it just as suspenseful and as a mystery. Unfortunately, they followed up with a more traditional slasher film. But, yeah. I mean, Psycho 2 was... it's right up there. It's, if Psycho is 1, then Psycho 2 is 1A. I mean, there's really not much of a drop-off in my opinion.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. Not when it came out, but not that long after. I remember seeing it in my teens and liking it quite a bit. I'm still not sure it holds a candle to the first one, but I'm not sure I'd rank it a 1A. But it was. I thought it was good. Which I have always loved, and this is a bit of a tangent. I've always loved the fact that the movie that pretty much spawned the slasher movement really isn't a slasher movie at all.
Right.
I've always enjoyed that concept. Basically, they took a 90-second scene or however long it is out of one movie and built a genre off of it, despite the fact that it's a weird scene in that movie. It's just great.
Well, I mean, go ahead, Les.
I was just going to say there is a movie out now concerning the scene of which you speak. And it's pretty cool that they have done a documentary about that one little time clip. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it was done in so many takes and it only lasts less than a minute. Yet it was one that caught the audience. All of a sudden, the audience was totally enwrapped with that.
Yeah, it's become one of the most influential scenes in any movie ever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so unlike the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just cool.
Alrighty. Before we get into this week's well, I guess you talk about what's going on with me. I'm sorry.
I was just thinking, you're skipping you this week, huh?
It has not been a good week. I didn't really have too much fun, unless you want to call doing my civic duty fun.
Oh,
you
had jury duty?
Yeah.
Ooh. Did you
Mm-hmm.
serve?
No.
Okay,
No.
good.
I did not get picked. And it was a rare occurrence because usually it seems like when I get one of these, it's a Monday or a Tuesday, and this time it happened to be a Thursday.
Yeah, I've had those before. Was this county or city?
Yeah, it was Dallas County,
Oh, yeah.
and it was gonna be criminal, and
Uh-huh.
it was a DWI case, which I had some feelings about. Not that I lost anybody or anything, but just I had some strong feelings and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I was actually let go by 1:30 or 2. That never happens to me. I'm usually there all day long. You got to be up there at 8 o'clock, and I know there was one time I was finally let go at 6 in the evening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that
So
before too.
So you're hitting rush hour traffic, which if those who live in the Dallas area know, it's not rush. It's moving rather damn slow.
Yeah, and the other bitch is that the criminal court in Dallas, and absolutely nobody listening to this cares about this, but that's okay. We're gonna do it anyway. The
Right.
criminal court, there's two courthouses in Dallas. There's the civil courthouse and there's the criminal courthouse. The civil courthouse is about 2 blocks from the DART rail.
Yeah.
One of the DART rail stations. If you want to take the mass transit to the criminal courthouse, you have to go downtown, you have to get off the train, and then you have to find the right bus, which is tricky because the last time I had to do this, I don't live in Dallas County anymore, so I don't care, but the last time I had to do this, they had a bus route with the same number, and it alternated. It would run in the direction of the courthouse for one stop, and the next one 10 minutes later would run in the other direction. And so it was real easy to get on the wrong damn bus because they have the same number. And
Wow.
so it's confusing as shit. The one time I had to serve on a criminal thing in Dallas County, I had to go down there for 3 days. And
Wow.
I got on the wrong bus one day. And I got a bunch of crap when I got to the courthouse. And the thing that pissed me off was they're giving me crap for being late. I actually wouldn't have been late if I hadn't had to wait for 30 minutes to get in the building through the security checkpoint. I would have been on time. But anyway, I digress. I'm not trying to take your thunder here, but
No, that's fine. Yeah, you either take the bus or you basically walk. I think it's about a little over a mile and a half walk, which is kind of dicey because you are in downtown Dallas.
It's not in the, strangely enough, the city jail, county jail, the county jail is not in a nice part of town.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, or you can drive your car down there and spend an hour and a half driving down there and pay, God, I don't even know anymore how much to park.
If the courthouse gives you the pass and all that, it's now $3.
Oh, really?
But if not, it's going to be $8, I think.
Yeah. More than you.
Yeah, so you spend $8 in parking, and then you basically get a $6 check for doing your service. So yeah, plus the fact that you're out of work for an entire day,
right?
Which was not an issue for me because Thursday was a day off. So I basically spent one of my days off in downtown Dallas waiting to do my duty as a citizen.
Right. And I guess the upside to this is they probably won't call you again for a couple of years.
Yeah, it seems to be about every 3 or 4 years or so.
I think I got told at one point the cycle was 3 years. So as long as it's close to that, you're all right.
Yeah.
But that's individual. That's for county. It's also 3 years for city, but it's a separate 3 years, so it could be any time in there. And then there's also federal, which I don't think I've ever gotten a federal one, but
I've never got a.
There's a courthouse not that far from me up here, but yeah.
I've never got one for federal. Not one for city either.
You may be exempt from city.
It could be. I don't know.
Have household issues there.
Yeah.
You may be exempt.
Well, in 3 years I may be exempt from county too. I may be dealing with. I may have some exemptions in 3 years, so we'll see. But and hope everybody out there had a good Halloween. If you want to know what we did on Halloween, well, you're actually listening to it right now.
We're so dedicated.
For those who are longtime listeners, probably know that we do record on Tuesday nights, and Halloween is no exception. It was almost an exception, but we were like, no, we can do it. It's not a problem. So here we are.
We turned our lights off at 8 o'clock, so we're good. It wasn't a real busy Halloween anyway, so. Yeah,
I don't think it was busy for anybody. It was raining earlier, so that may put a dampener on a lot of trick-or-treaters.
A literal dampener.
Yep. Ba-dum-bum. Alrighty, before we get into this week's topic, I do want to take a moment and hope everybody's enjoyed our little Carpenter retrospective or tribute or whatever you like to call it. I know we had fun doing it and look forward to what we're going to be doing next October. So if you did, let us know. That would be awesome. But go ahead and take a moment to thank our sponsors for their support. And I'm talking about the fine folks at Things from Another World. Currently, they are running their evergreen deals. We're getting closer to Christmas, so they're going to start throwing some really spectacular sales not too long from now. But what they got going on right now is 40% off on comics, statues, toys, and merchandise. 30% off select pre-order manga titles, and 50% off Nick and Dent comics and trades, just to name a few. So, if you want to take advantage of some of those deals, why don't you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, click on our sponsors tab. You'll see information for Things from Another World and some links. If you click on those, you can see what kind of deals you'll run into, and that lets them know that we sent you their way. So, hey, it's not too early to start thinking about Christmas. So go ahead and start doing some shopping for others, and of course, shop for yourself. Have a blast, guys. Alrighty, this week we were planning on doing this a couple of months ago, but we pushed it back a little bit, and that's okay. We're still going to talk about them. This is actually the 30th anniversary, right?
Mm-hmm.
30 years?
1987.
There you go. Of a TV series that, honestly, I didn't think we were ever going to have. It was called Star Trek: The Next Generation. Because up to that point, we had the original series, which had problems. If you're a fan of Star Trek, you know this, that they had problems trying to keep on air. They were canceled twice, and were finally canceled for good. And then we had the animated series that lasted 2 seasons, And then we were actually going to have another series in the late 70s. I'm trying to remember what it was called. Like
Phase
the
2.
second Phase 2. Thank you.
Star
Yeah,
Trek
I knew it
Phase
was.
2.
I knew it was going. I knew it was 2 or second, so I couldn't remember. But that got scrapped because of a movie called Star Wars, and Paramount said, "Hey, we got something that we can maybe kind of."
We can make movies.
Yeah, we got something that maybe can kind of work with that. So, they killed off Phase 2 and basically, started a movie franchise off of Star Trek. So here we go with a new series. Moved 85. It was 85 years. It was from the movie franchise. I know there was literally 85-year gap. It may be from where they started in the films. But obviously the Klingon Federation War had ended, and some Klingons were actually serving in the Federation, and a lot of changes. And this was actually kind of dicey because you're talking about a whole new crew, and of course it being so far in the future that from what was known that there was a little doubt about it. From what I saw of it, I was like, okay, it's Star Trek, but I'm not sure.
The question becomes, what does Star Trek mean without Kirk, Spock, and McCoy?
Exactly.
And so that's what we were waiting to see.
Yes. So go ahead, Mikey. I know you're the big Star Trek guy. Tell us your thoughts about
All right. I will admit I was damn near frantic when they announced that there was going to be a new Star Trek series on TV. That would have been about a year before it came out. So they announced it in '86, which was, I believe. No, yeah. Was that the year 4 came out? It was right around there.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm blanking on this.
Yeah, because I remember when the film came out on like DVD or VHS, there was a little teaser for the show.
Yeah.
I seem to remember that.
I remember they announced it right about the time, or right after. I mean, once 4 was clearly a big success, they announced that they were going to do a new series. And they didn't say anything about it, as I recall. They didn't give any details. But yeah, they set it 85 years in the future, basically so that they wouldn't have to pay William Shatner or Leonard Nimoy to be on the show. Which sounds cynical, but realistically, it's a factor. They also, and this is, I may be going into a little more detail than I need to, Paramount did their best to not include Gene Roddenberry in this process. Forgetting, of course, from the late 60s that Gene Roddenberry was a persistent SOB, if nothing else, and did actually manage to get himself put in charge. And his idea behind it was that we want the future to be a pleasant experience. And so what we need to do is we need to make it so that mankind doesn't really have that much conflict anymore. I mean, among itself, humanity is at peace with itself, which the writers of this show hated that shit completely, because conflict is where drama comes from. How do you have a TV drama with no conflict?
Right.
And honestly, this really only lasted for the first season or two, so it wasn't that big a deal. But yeah. So 87 rolls around, I'll jump back to what I really should be talking about. And I was just desperate for this thing to come out, and it finally came on, and I watched it religiously, which for me and TV series is impressive. I watched it religiously for almost 2 full seasons, basically through high school, and loved it. Just absolutely loved every minute of it. It was. I mean, there were some rough spots in that first season until you started to get to know the characters.
Yeah, you could say it was a little rough. Yes.
Well, and behind the scenes, we didn't have any idea at the time how rough it was behind the scenes. But even
Right.
on screen, it was a little ham-handed at times.
Yeah.
But it did serve to get us to know the ensemble cast,
Hmm.
and introduce a lot of us to what a Shakespearean actor can do and be. Some of us had never had any exposure to that before. But if you're going to bring somebody like Patrick Stewart in, yeah, it's a different experience. And yeah, I was in wholeheartedly at the ripe old age of, how old was I? 16?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
Well,
was I had really only discovered Star Trek at like age 10 or 11. And so it was, I mean, I watched all of the original series in reruns. I didn't actually see, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't actually see the animated series until much later. I knew it was there, I knew it existed.
hmm
Um, I never found a way to watch it until actually not that long ago. And it was, I think, better than most people get it credit for, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
There's also drama there too. That was funny. But anyway, yeah, we're not talking about that. We're talking about next gen.
Right. I do want to jump in. Something that you said, it kind of made me think about it. I know you've watched it, Mike. I'm sure Les has seen it, and any Trek fan has probably seen it. But I do want to point it out that you talked about the fact that Patrick Stewart with his Shakespearean training and all of that, being on the show and all that. I highly recommend watching the documentary The Captains, which was by
Oh yeah.
Shatner, and because he talks to Patrick Stewart, and they talk about that first season, and he mentions how they've got the cast all there, and he's trying to go, come on, this is serious. We need, we got to have our shit together and all that kind of stuff. While they're kind of just goofing off and having fun and all that, and they slowly start start changing him a little bit to where he's kind of joining in. So it's kind of funny. I thought about that when you were talking about his background and all that, and it's kind of funny what kind of pops in your head when someone says a thing or so. But
Mm-hmm.
it was funny to hear that because. He's a funny man. If you follow him on social media and all that, he's got a great sense of humor, and some of the stuff he does, you could tell that he can do the really serious drama, but he can have a blast just like anybody else. So, but it just kind of,
And it's also interesting from the Captains, and I actually had kind of forgotten that. It's been a while since I saw the Captains.
yeah,
To hear that. To hear about that first season from his perspective,
yeah,
if you want to hear the other side of that story,
yeah,
and I think this was sparked from his experience doing the Captains. Bill Shatner did another documentary, actually only a couple of years ago, which is called Chaos on the Bridge.
okay,
This is specifically about the first couple of seasons, about all of that stuff going on in the background for the first couple of seasons of Next Generation. And it gives you the other side of the story about how it at least appeared that Stewart had taken that job basically just for the money,
hmm,
and didn't really feel any investment in it, and so he was kind of aloof and cranky that whole almost all of that first season, until he finally, like I said, started to loosen up, and ended up obviously being just a treat to work with later on.
hmm,
But that first, like 3/4 of that first season, he was not. They have a. It's not really a different story, but it's definitely interesting to hear the other side of it, to hear how his presence was felt from the other side.
Right.
It's very cool. That's actually really. I highly recommend both of those documentaries.
I have not seen Chaos on the Bridge. I definitely would like to check that out. You know what would be interesting? I don't know if it's ever been discussed or anything's been done, but it just, once again, the way the mind kind of works when something's being said. Because when you were talking about the other side, I was thinking about the original cast. And that maybe be kind of an interesting, maybe a documentary of here is the original cast, what they've done, what has been achieved from what they've done, and then here comes this next crew that they've been basically pushed to the side. We appreciate what you've done. Here's the next generation. We're moving on. How are their thoughts about this? That kind of thing. I don't know if that would be interesting enough, but I think it would be.
And you'll catch that from time in pieces. I even think in Chaos on the Bridge, I think Shatner says something about it. I mean, he doesn't go into any major detail,
right?
But he does kind of mention that, they were. It was obvious that they were making this so that we couldn't, so that we didn't have to be involved. And
right.
The one thing that I always thought was interesting, especially hearing some of that stuff later on, was there was a cameo in the pilot, in the very first episode of Next Generation, which I think was kind of their way of finding a way to sort of smooth that over a little bit, because DeForest Kelley appeared as a 137-year-old Dr. McCoy.
Right.
When they were launching the Enterprise, they had him on the ship. They had him tour the ship, and it's like a 2-minute scene, but it's actually a really cool scene.
It's a great scene, yeah.
And that was their way of doing it without having to pay Shatner or Nimoy to do it, I think.
Right.
Which sounds a little cynical, but
well,
they also managed to have them both be part of it in various ways later.
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
So, yeah,
exactly.
Nimoy appeared on the show, and Shatner appeared in the first movie.
Right. Okay, Les, you've been kind of on the sideline.
I'm kind of taking all of this in. I do remember watching the first episodes on television, and I was thoroughly enjoyed it. It was just so much fun to watch this and feel like they are making a return. Yes, it ended up running much longer than the original series did, but it also had a stronger cast than what was previously set forward. And I thought that made a big difference in this whole conglomerate. The first episode laid everything out for you. They did not vary from episode to episode or season to season. There was a formula there that we defeated this character in this episode, and therefore when they return, it's not going to be the way we defeated him before. It was, the screenwriters were held accountable to follow what was done previously. So there was no mix-up as has been found in, say, comic books. When you do a retcon or something of that nature, they just followed through stringently, and I thought that they fleshed out characters much more than the original run did, and were successful by it. The American public was ready for this, and they were happy to find that this was going to be an ongoing series. Yeah, I think it probably ran longer than the other Star Trek series did combined, because it ran 9 years.
7.
7.
7. Okay, well that's the original was 3, and then Deep Space was 2, I think, and
No.
Voyager was 2, things like that. So it's almost
No. All the other shows ran 7 seasons with maybe not Enterprise.
Enterprise ran 4.
Yeah.
The others all ran 7.
Yeah, Voyager and Deep Space Nine ran 7 as well.
But they also came after.
Yeah.
And a couple of those were even established by
Next Gen.
Yep. Oh, sure. Yeah, they did them. They did them as hardcore spin-offs, for sure.
Right.
I mean, they gave DS9 Worf, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And O'Brien.
And O'Brien, yeah, because actually Major Kira was originally supposed to be Ensign Rowe.
Yeah.
They had actually added her on Next Generation to spin her off on the Deep Space Nine, but that didn't happen, so we got Kira instead, which is fine because I like both characters. But,
right. Me too.
Something else, once again, something was said that something popped in my head. The thing about original Trek, the episodes for the most part, really focused on Kirk and Spock. There will be a little bit from McCoy. There may be an episode where Scotty's kind of focused or something. Where Next Gen would really mixed it up. It took about a season or so, but it wasn't all just Picard. It wasn't all just Data. Everybody kind of had an episode or so, had their own episodes to kind of shine, and I think that's what's needed. That way, you flesh out those characters a lot more. Make why you get more interested in them and care about them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Next Gen was definitely intended. It was designed as an ensemble cast.
Right.
Whereas the original series was not. The original series was intended to be Kirk.
Yeah.
From the beginning. Spock proved to be so popular that they had to feature him more.
Yeah, I agree.
And McCoy turned out to be a really good foil for Spock.
Right.
So he ended up getting a lot of screen time. He was really never... I mean, they didn't put D. Kelly in the main credits until the third season. Was it second? Maybe it was the second.
Yeah, it was either second or third.
Yeah, I mean, he not in the first season. Yeah. He was not even. I mean, I don't want to say he wasn't credited. He was credited, but he wasn't in the main credits. He wasn't listed on the opening credits for at least the first season. Yeah. Right. Whereas with Next Gen, they knew if they were going to build a dramatic series in a utopian society, they were damn sure going to have to do something character-based because they were not going to survive otherwise. It wasn't going to work. So yeah, they built an ensemble cast of 7 or 8 people at the time. And then you have the behind-the-scenes crap that nearly broke the show at the end of the first season, where you've got people desperate to escape.
Yeah.
And so you've got Denise Crosby arranging to get her character killed off, and you've got Gates McFadden just refusing to come back for the second season. And I don't want to spoil the documentaries that were suggesting that you go out and watch too much, but suffice it to say it was a change in showrunner that was the problem. Neither of them could stand the new showrunner at that point. And that happened before the end of the first season. It was like halfway through the season that they switched out showrunners. But yeah, so that really shook up the ensemble, even that early on. And they managed to still rearrange things and hang on to enough of an ensemble cast that it all worked out. Which I can't imagine how much work that took on the part of the writers and the showrunner to make that happen. But yeah, it was impressive. And the reason they both came back at some point was because obviously that showrunner left.
Yeah.
They ran him off. But anyway.
Well, Denise only came back in just cameos, obviously.
Right.
They handled that real well. You know, they handled that real well. They kind of brought her back through a time travel thing, which led into the other character, and which I won't spoil too much. But
yeah, and that was okay. Again, the time travel thing, but so for me that was a bit of a weird way of handling it. But I mean, it worked, and people liked it, and they made for some good episodes. So it's all good,
right?
Even if there's a weird time travel element to it.
Yeah, well, we know you're a fan of time travel. So.
And I'll be honest, a lot of why I have problems with time travel was because the original series did it so poorly. And I say that with obviously the one big exception. Nobody can argue with City on the Edge of Forever, and I won't even try. But any other time they tried to do time travel, I don't think it worked. I never thought it worked. It just didn't make sense. And then they turned around and did it in Star Trek 4. And that is honestly my only problem with that movie is the time travel element. But anyway, it's a brilliant movie otherwise. I'm a fan, don't get me wrong, but anyway.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Because I've been trying to go back and think if this had been done before Next Generation. And where I'm going here is, I believe it was season 3 that the season actually ended on a cliffhanger. Now, the only other time I can think of this was done was the whole Who Shot JR. You know, that ended on a cliffhanger. Right.
Funny that you go basically straight to what's effectively a soap opera.
Right.
A bad cliffhanger.
Yeah, it's a bad cliffhanger. And yeah, it's soap opera. But for any other kind of primetime shows or primetime drama, granted this is sci-fi, but it was still a drama.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
That, you know, I mean, usually the seasons kind of had an ending and kind of wrapped things up, and then for the next season, you kind of start off new. And that didn't happen with season 3 because we had Best of the Both Worlds, which is a classic story. For those who are not familiar with it, this is the one where the Borg kidnapped Picard and turned him into a Borg. And Riker had to take over Enterprise and actually battle his captain. So great story.
And kidnap him back. But anyway.
Yeah. Which led into one of the other great. There's the follow up after that, Family.
Oh yeah.
Or was it Family, or is it Reunion?
Family.
That's such a wonderful episode.
Oh, it is. And there's absolutely nothing. I mean, it's one of the things that's great about it is that it's as if they just completely took Star Trek out of the equation for that episode.
Yes.
There's no Star Trek. He goes home to Earth, and he spends the whole episode on his family farm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm basically just reconnecting with humanity and his family that he really hadn't paid much attention to. And yeah, it's brilliant. And there's like no technology in the thing at all.
It's just a great script, wonderful acting, just everything about it is just perfect. And that's what Star Trek can do. I mean, yeah, there's always the the technology, there's the ships, there's always the battle, there's always the alien races and all that, but there's always there's some great, wonderful stories that deals with the human drama.
Right, and every so often they would pull out an episode that would do that. It would just say, okay, forget all of that. Yes, we've got all these great gadgets and tools and toys and stuff in all of this technology. Screw it. Let's just remove all of that. Take that stuff out of the equation and just do a good episode. Just write a good show.
Right.
And I mean, it was almost as if they did it every so often just to kind of prove to themselves they still could.
Yeah.
And it really worked a lot. They did it well on several occasions. But yeah, I mean, other than one of the things that one of the reasons they could get away with that, and again, I don't want to go too much into spoiler territory for some of these documentaries, but Next Generation was a rarity in that it was a show that none of them they shopped it at all the major networks, which at the time was CBS, NBC, and ABC. This is pre-Fox.
Right.
Or Fox, I don't remember. Fox may have just started up at this point. But basically all three of the major networks, they didn't. It's not that they shot it down. It's just that they weren't willing to just sign it on for a full season, sight unseen.
Right.
They wanted. One of them wanted a mini series to decide whether they wanted to do it, and the other ones wanted something else, and they were just like, you know what? No, screw this. We'll do it ourselves. So it started out basically in syndication, which is something that almost never happened up to that point.
Right.
Especially a show that big. And it started out in just about every market in the country. And the way they did that was they went to individual stations. They just stayed away from the networks. They went around the networks and just went to the stations and said, "Hey, we've got this show. Do you want to show it?" And got a huge response, completely unprecedented. And so when you're in a position where you've started from that, built an extremely successful show for 3 seasons, you know damn well you're going to have a 4th season because you're just going to make it and people are going to buy it from you and put it on the air. You can get away with the cliffhanger thing a little better because
right.
if you end season 3 on a cliffhanger, the stations are just going to be clamoring that much more to get the next season, which is not how the major networks worked. And so when you had situations with Dallas, for example, because it's a great example of a show that's so successful that that the network knows they're going to show it next season, they can get away with that. And they have to know that early enough in the season to arrange for the cliffhanger to be written and produced and all of that crap by the end of the season. So you have to do it pretty early. You have to know pretty early so you can build up to it. Most series on a network at the time, and this is probably just as true today, don't really have that comfort level. They don't really know that their show is really going to. I mean, it could get canceled. Almost any show could get canceled. I mean, right now, The Big Bang Theory could get canceled. How likely is it? Not very. But that's a show that's probably going to walk away on its own, which is also a show we can talk about at some point. I have opinions, but there's a certain comfort level there when you're basically you're doing it as almost. I mean, it seems weird to think of it this way, as big as it was, but it was kind of done on an indie level, and so they knew what they were going to do. They knew where the show was going to be in a few months when the new season started. They knew they were going to make them. They had a plan for X number of seasons. They had. I read this not too long ago. I think I may have read it today, honestly. They had the main cast signed for 8 seasons from the beginning. They opted to end it at 7. They could have done an 8th season. They had all the people. They opted to stop and go to movies But but that's something they controlled the whole way through. That was totally on them. They knew that. And so it's a lot easier to do that cliffhanger thing when you know for sure where the show is going to be next year.
Okay.
Let's look at what we knew of Star Trek and what this group brought us. You look at two totally different ideas of what is out there. We now have the evil group working alongside us. What were the reactions to that? Was it readily accepted, or was that something that they had to fight through too?
I don't know. Well, I think the point of it was so it would create, or at least it could create drama along the way. It was the way they did it. It was something that had been recent enough that it might still be awkward at times within the script itself. I mean, the Klingons hadn't really been serving in Starfleet up to that point. Worf was pretty much the first, or one of the first.
Yeah. Right.
And so you do it that way so that you can. I mean, there has been peace for a little while, but it hasn't really been that long. Or that was the implication at the time, anyway. Later on, they rewrote that a bit, but whatever. So in a way, you're kind of building that so that you can have that. You can bring that conflict that you're actually kind of avoiding down to an interpersonal level rather than having it on a global scale. And they also, on top of that, they had other options for bad guys, for evil empires. I mean, they still had the Romulans. They barely touched on the Romulans in the original series. I think they were in like 2 episodes, maybe 3. So you still had them, and it wasn't outside the realm of possibility to make up a new one like they did with the Borg.
Very true.
And I mean, honestly, they also made a lot of seemingly impossible things possible with a character like Q, who they just flat out started right off with in the friggin' first episode. We're going to need to do something. We're going to need to have something in our pocket. I'd love to think that they thought this at the time, but it sure as hell worked out this way. We need to have some way of making the impossible happen. So let's create this character who can do anything and is capricious enough to actually do it. There you got Q.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'd love to know for a fact that they did this on purpose.
Right.
Or if it was just a lucky happenstance along the way. I'd like to think they're professional writers so they know what they're doing, but anything's possible. They could. I mean, sometimes writers rely on luck too, but it also ties back to that, 85 years. I mean, humanity is fairly civilized in the original series, but there's still progress that can be made, and so they kind of have to show some of that progress. They kind of have to show. I'm trying to think of a term for this. Domestication is the word that's coming to mind, and I know that's not right. They have to show the, pacification. It still doesn't feel like a good term, but they have to show humanity becoming even less hostile and violent than they were 100 years before, because, I mean, that's the direction you want things to go. If you're looking forward, if you're looking at it as like a futurist would, you want humanity to improve and become better. Well, what does that mean? It means the ability to focus on improvement rather than focusing on petty conflicts. So you take one of Kirk's biggest enemies, the Klingons, and you make peace with them, and you kind of invite them into your house. So, it works toward that making humanity better thing, I think. I'm not even sure any of that made sense, but that's nothing new.
It does.
Do you think that I remember, I don't know if it was my dad that mentioned it or someone had talked to me a long time ago, mentioning that they were surprised that I guess they felt that peace would have been made between the Federation and the Romulans before the Klingons. And they asked me if I was surprised about that. I'm like, well, I had honestly hadn't thought about it, and I really hadn't thought more about it since then. But it could have been just like you were talking about, the fact that the original series really pushed Klingons as the major threat to the galaxy, where the Romulans were a lot more secretive and that kind of thing. Were you surprised?
Me? No. No, I thought it was a good move on their part. It's like in a comic book. You can't fight the same person every month.
Right.
So let's give them a little diversity and open it up. See what happens.
Yeah, well, I get that, but it's just the fact that that was the Klingons, and of course, later on we find out why that happened. But it's just the fact that it was the Klingons in the Federation that kind of became allies as opposed to the Romulans, because Romulans, while they're more warlike, have a shared history with the Vulcans, who are the Federation's closest allies.
Yeah.
Right, but there's also, if it's me, I'd probably go the same way, because the Klingons, to an extent, represent just kind of raw hostility,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of a feather in humanity's cap that they managed to kind of get past that hostility and make peace with the Klingons. The Romulans are different. They're not hostile. And one of the things that I thought was cool, or in the way they handled it, was that they put a lot more stress on the idea that Romulans basically don't view humans as equals. And they did this through the run of Next Generation. When they dealt with the Romulans, they didn't. Like I said, they only dealt with the Romulans a couple of times in the original series, so it didn't really come up. But the more they dealt with the Romulans, the more they stressed the idea that the Romulans basically view humans as lesser creatures, and so you've got more to prove in that regard. With when you're facing hostility, you can meet hostility with hostility and impress your enemy. That's harder to do when they don't view you as equal, when they don't view you as civilized. And so there's almost you can almost play that as a mirror flip. We're making peace with the Klingons, who are, I almost hate to say this, less civilized than humans. It's kind of the other way. It's the other way around with the Romulans, and so it's harder for us, since we're on the bottom end of that. It's harder for us to initiate it. It's easy for us to look in the one direction at the Klingons, who seem less civilized. Turns out they're not really less civilized. But anyway, that's the appearance. It's the initial appearance. The original series didn't go very far to try to dissuade us from that idea. It's easier to an extent look down and raise somebody else up than it is to look up and raise yourself up. Again, I don't know if any of this is making sense, but it in a way, it seems making peace with the Klingons is going to be a whole lot easier, and it also pulls that separate culture in and lets you take a deeper look at it from time to time. The Romulans, yeah, like you said, are more mysterious and basically sneakier. They definitely operate in a different way, and it's harder to tap into that, and also easier to use that in their kind of capriciousness in a dramatic way, because you can argue with them and argue with them and argue with them and argue with them, and eventually they'll just give up and just go, oh, screw it, whatever, just leave. Whereas the Klingons don't do that. They're just going to keep punching. I mean, you're waiting for them to have an epiphany, whereas the Romulans have a plan. So it kind of, I don't know. The Romulans, I think, are a better long-term enemy than the Klingons would be. So it makes more sense to kind of not make the Klingons an enemy anymore.
Okay. You think the show ended at the right time? You think 7 seasons was enough?
Yes, the one question I actually don't feel entirely qualified to answer at the moment. Because the deal is, I'm still in the middle of rewatching the series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in like season 4.
Okay.
And I mean, I mentioned before that I watched the show religiously for like most of the first 2 seasons. I kind of dropped off at that point and caught a lot of them in reruns, but I didn't catch them all. And
right.
I mean, the early ones were, I think, rerun more than the later ones, just because that's the way that works, because you're rerunning them while you're showing the new ones.
Right.
And so I legitimately don't remember season 7 as well as I remember some of the earlier seasons, because I've watched them in the last 2 years. I suspect that, they probably needed to stop, because I mean, even the best set of writers and the best showrunners and the best producers and all of that are just, I mean, to an extent, you can only keep doing it for so long.
Right.
I mean, you're putting out 26 episodes a season. That's a lot. That's a lot of writing. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of special effects. It's a lot of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I also suspect that they were eager to get into the movie side of it at that point. I think they wanted to do something bigger, so they wanted to do some movies, and I think they didn't want to do that while they still had an active series.
Right.
So in terms of jumping to the big screen, they kind of had to end it. And it also lets them end it without ending it. So there's that as well. And by the time that ended, DS9 was already rolling pretty well. Damn, I can't remember when Voyager started. I think it was right after.
Yeah.
It was right around the time it ended, or the next gen ended, but may have been a little later.
It came about a year or so, maybe a little bit more.
So I mean, they've already, at that point, they know they've got a hit in DS9. They're probably already planning Voyager. Again, a lot of stuff going on all at once. So I think for several reasons it makes sense to end it there. How much of them are actually story related, I don't know. Probably not very many, but it let them make the jump to the big screen anyway.
Right. Okay. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
All 7 seasons are on Netflix.
Nice.
If you've got Netflix. There are some episodes in the first season that seem a little, even in the second season, that may seem a little hokey today, but it's still good stuff. So if you get a chance, check it out. It's a lot of episodes, so you'll be watching it for a while, even if you're a binger.
Yeah, the first season's a little rough, but
it has some moments. It has some really good moments.
Yeah, there were some really good episodes, but there were some. But it was like you said earlier. It was trying to find find its voice.
It's trying to find its footing. It's trying to build the ensemble, and
Right.
sometimes that takes a while. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to let it play out. But yeah, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. Okay, Les?
What is the future? Is there a word of anything in the makeup now of doing another?
Well, there's Discovery, which I believe is set. When is that set? I'm a little
I
fuzzy on
think,
when it's set.
I'm not sure, but I think it's just maybe prior to Kirk, but not by much. And I'm not sure if it's in the Kevin Trek verse or the old universe. I don't know. I don't know. I still have not watched that. So
Well, it's not necessarily easy to watch. I mean,
right.
it's not easy to get hold of. I mean, you pretty much have to sign up for CBS's service to watch it.
Yeah,
Which I
but
haven't
I
done.
didn't. Yeah, I didn't. But I didn't watch the first episode when it was on regular TV. I just,
I didn't either. And
um,
anyway, there's. I don't want to go down that road.
right.
But
Well, knowing that they're going to mess you around, I can understand why it may not be as popular, even as a thought, as the other stuff is.
yeah, and I think they're trying to find a new audience with it. I
Yeah.
mean, essentially the same idea as the reboot movies. There's they're different, and different is not necessarily a bad thing,
Right.
um, but it's different. And those of us who have been fans of it from the beginning are going to be less amenable to the changes than a whole new group of fresh-faced young movie-going audience now. And so it's one of those things where they're not making it for us anymore. And I'm not knocking that as a plan because I know where the money is. But it's
It's yeah.
I'm not quite sure how to verbalize the feeling there that I have about
Right.
it. I'm not angry, but I'm not thrilled. I'm not real happy about it either. But it's they're using it and they're moving on, and part of moving on involves leaving something behind, and I'm part of the something that they're leaving behind at this point. So,
Right.
and I don't know exactly how much that relates to Discovery, but I don't know. It has made me less interested in a new Star Trek series. And again, Next Gen is on Netflix, so I
Yep.
can watch that anytime I want.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you say that, and then hey, you know, next gen's not has not gone. It's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Episodes are available, and it's as well as the movies. So they're still there. They're still a part of it. So,
Yep.
alrighty. On that note, we will take a quick break and come back with our weekly picks. And we're back. It is time for our weekly picks. And this week, Mike leads off.
I lead off, and I'm going to start off with an Image title. I'm going with Royal City, number 7. We're in the second arc of Royal City, and I've mentioned this title before. It is Jeff Lemire's solo book. He's writing and drawing, and this is based on this family in this city, and it really reads like kind of a slice of life type story, but there's clearly something weird going on in the background, and a lot of the weirdness is based on one of the kids whose name is Tommy, And that's what this arc. That's where this arc is going. Is we're starting to uncover some of the things that are weird about Tommy. So it's really interesting. The characters are, oddly enough, a lot of them are both likable and unlikable at the same time. Which maybe that's weird. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. I don't care. It's really cool. It's really fun. Really fun story. Not necessarily a happy story, but a really fun story.
Alrighty. Cool. Les, you're next.
My first choice is Moon Knight, number 188. The high number is due to the legacy numbering system for Marvel. I'm ready for this because this is one of my favorite characters in the Marvel Universe. A man that does not interact with many of the heroes in the Marvel Universe in the capacity of being a partner or being a team member. He is mainly a solo. So in this one, there's a new villain that is to show up. And I'm kind of ready for this. They deem it Moon Knight's greatest nemesis. So with the previous series that have run, could this be Spectre looking upon himself, or is it something different? Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this book.
Yeah, from what I have seen, it looks like Max Bemis, who's writing this, is taking the series back more toward a traditional hero book, where the several previous series, yeah, he was a superhero, but they really focused on his broken psyche, the multiple voices, the multiple personalities, and that kind of stuff. They really kind of focused on that, where this one seems to be a little bit more of the straight up superhero adventure, which would be nice. It'd be a nice change. I like the previous runs. For the most part, they were really, really well done. The previous series that was written by Jeff Lemire was great. I liked it a lot. I mean, I think I've stated here before. If I hadn't, I've definitely done it in person. The first couple issues, you really start doubting whether Mark Spector is not just some guy in a padded jacket in a hospital, you know, and he's totally insane. That was kind of an interesting kind of take, but it's kind of nice that we're actually getting back to the superhero vibe. It'd be kind of nice to kind of go back to that for a while.
Cool.
Yep. And I think I lost Les, so that's okay. I am up next, and for my first pick, I'm going with DC Comics, and it is Action Comics 991, and this is the final chapter of the Oz Effect story arc, which this has been crazy, to say the least. Kind of fill you in, and for those who've not been reading this, it has been revealed who Mr. Oz is, and spoiler alert, because it's already been out everywhere, that Mr. Oz is actually Jor-El. And he's revealed himself, and he has a plan to. What he wants to do is take Clark, Lois, and John and leave Earth, because something is about to happen, something that they can't stop, and if they stay on Earth, they will die with everybody else, and frankly, Earth is not worth saving, because humanity is not as noble creatures as he thought when he sent Kal-El to Earth those years ago. It's been a rather intriguing story. I know there's people I've seen in social media. I haven't come across them in person yet, but I'm sure I know some of them who really want to think that this is not the real Jor-El, but I think it is, and I think it would be kind of cheap if they turn around and say, well, it's actually someone else just pretending to be Jor-El. But I mean, I guess it could happen. But I've been really intrigued by the fact that this is Superman's father, and it's been a really good story.
Interesting twist.
Yeah.
It has been a really good read.
We'll see where we go from there. Alrighty, Mikey.
Alrighty. My second choice is an Image title. Yeah, I know. Two of them. Deal with it.
I didn't say anything.
No, I know. I'm going with Injection. This is number 15. And I know this is another one I've talked about before, but damn it, it's really good. And it's written by Warren Ellis, so if B saying it's really good wasn't enough, there you go. And the Declan Shalvey's art is amazing, of course. But so this is actually the end of the arc. Bridget is one of the group that created the Injection sometime back. This is before the series started. And it has managed to find a way to open a gate to the other, what they call the other world. And so now she's got to figure out how to handle this. The way they treat this thing, and I don't want to go into any real spoilers for this, but it's a really cool story. And the way they've gone with these arcs is they've kind of focused. There's a group of people that created this thing, and I'm not going to talk about what the thing is, but they created something. And each arc has kind of focused on one of the people in the group. And so this one is a lady named Bridget, and she's really good with technology. So she's a pretty good problem solver. So how she chooses to deal with this is that's the thing for me anyway. This is how she reacts to this is kind of going to show a lot about her personality and what kind of character she has. So I'm trying to sell this without giving spoilers because it's just weird enough to be fun, and there's just enough strange stuff going on. It's really good. Go buy it. I mean, I don't know really how else to say it at this point. Go get it. Go read it.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh. Alrighty. Les.
Well, let me see. From Titan Comics is my second choice. Cynthia Von Bueller has created a title called Minky Woodcock, the Girl Who Handcuffed Houdini. I don't know what I can say about this. This is one of their crime novel series, and the creator, Von Bueller, is an artist, an author, a director, and a playwright. So she knows what she's doing for a start. And in this, you have a character, Minky Woodcock, that is not considered the best detective at her father's detective agency. But in this series, Minky puts on her gumshoes and starts to look into a magical mystery, no tour involved, about the world-famous escape artist. I want to see this because I love the crime novels or the crime stories that Titan Comics has been putting out. And this one is one of those that I am looking forward to.
Yeah, their run on these has been really good. They've got some really good stories out lately for these crime things.
Yeah. Hard case crime. Yep. Really good stuff.
Yep.
Alrighty. I am up again, and I'm going with Image Comics.
Wow.
It's a brand new series called Port of Earth, written by Zach Kaplan, with art by Andrea Muti. And it's a premise of Earthlings and aliens actually doing business transactions, that kind of thing, instead of a kind of a invasion or peace type thing. Just to actually commerce, and what happens if a group of aliens starts trying to raise hell. And we're about to find out as a newly formed law enforcement, especially for this type of stuff, has to handle a series of events that are happening on it's on Earth, on the space. It's a spaceport, obviously. It's called Port on Earth, but it definitely has me intrigued. I think this might be kind of interesting. They call it a gritty sci-fi action thriller, which I kind of start cringing when someone uses the word gritty thriller. I'm like, that gets thrown around a little too often, but
Kinda.
But I kind of like the premise of this book. I think it might be all right.
And if nothing else, if you have not read Zach Kaplan's recent work in Eclipse, I'd say he's a writer worth following.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm in for this one.
Alrighty, Mikey.
Alrighty. Well, since you picked an Image book, I'll go with an IDW book.
Oh,
for my
okay.
honorable mention. And this one, fittingly enough, is Star Trek Waypoint. This is the trade for the Waypoint series, which was kind of an anthology series, which spanned across the incarnations of Star Trek. There were different stories for just about all of them, really. And I thought they did a really nice job as I was reading them as they were coming out, the floppies. And so now that this is collected, I definitely recommend checking it out. They did a really nice job, especially with some of the character stuff. It was a lot of fun, and I have not been a big fan necessarily of the other Star Trek stuff that they've been doing lately. But this was really good. I mean, partly probably because it was almost a nostalgic look at the old series. But I think they did a really nice job with it.
I didn't read the entire series, but I did read some of it, and I was impressed with the handling. So now I got a chance to pick up the trade and catch up on what I missed. Yeah, it was some good stuff. Alrighty, Les, what's your honorable mention?
My honorable comes from Black Mass Comics. It was a 5-issue series called 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank. We have hit upon this title before, and one problem I had with the issues was the frequency when they were released. But in this one, it was a nice dark comedy about bungling criminals and some kids. So yeah, I recommend this one because Matthew Rosenberg writing this and Tyler Voss doing the art really kicked in. It was highly recommended by Kieran Gilliard, and who called it the Imagine Tarantino Does Goonies.
Nice.
And Brian K. Vaughan said it was exploding with ambition and love of the medium. And it does. It really puts the point across that these are two members of the comic book world that enjoy what they put out. So I would say that this book that's going to run around 160 pages, no, I'm sorry, it's a little over 180, I believe, is a fine sit down. And don't be surprised if you find that you want to find more work by these guys.
Oh, Rosenberg is writing for Marvel now. He's writing 2 or 3 books.
Yeah, he was doing Kingpin.
Yeah.
And Secret Warriors.
And he's about to do the Resurrection of Phoenix. That's coming out.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Tyler Voss has been doing Lazarus.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. I guess I am next, and for my honorable mention, I'm going with Action Lab, part of their Danger Zone line, and it's Harcourt Legacy, #1. And this is about a cultist who's spent his life trying to find what he calls true magic, and he thinks he's come across stuff, but he's now dying, so he's wanting to pass this information on to his grandniece. But apparently, the cultist has a sister who has her own plans. This kind of sounds like an interesting little premise. I don't really do a lot of stuff about magic. I don't really read a lot of comics about magic and that kind of stuff. So this is kind of be a little bit different for me. But the Action Lab Danger imprint, they can put out some really good stuff. And I think Mikey mentioned last week Infinite 7, which just ended. So it just ended. There's of course less with the Mara Karate and a few others. So they put out some really good stuff. So this one definitely has my interest.
Yep, sounds cool to me.
Yeah.
Same here, and you deviating from or into the magic, I think is good. This one intrigued me too. The premise was, to me, is pretty cool.
Yeah. Alrighty. Any special mentions this week?
Nothing springing to mind.
Yeah, not to me either. You, Les?
Nothing here.
Alrighty. Let's get into our regular shout-outs. First off, want to say thank you to Manny the Murder for the music we use for our show. You guys really need to go out and check out their stuff. There will be a link in our show notes. If you go to our website, once again, that's www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Click on the podcast page. You'll see their logo, and that'll take you. Just click on that. That'll take you to their website and check out They put out 2 CDs, I believe, so far. So yeah, take a listen. I think you'll like what you'll hear. Thank you, guys. Also want to say thanks to the fine men and women of the Pottern family on Twitter for spreading the word of the fellowship, sharing, retweeting our links. Thank you guys very, very much. We're very appreciative of your support. If you're looking for any kind of podcast or whatever, you're looking for. Just go to Twitter. You don't necessarily have to have an account. Do a search, hashtag Modern Family, that's one word, and have fun. You'll find something great. You'll find some very entertaining shows. So knock yourself out. And thank you once again for helping us out. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We appreciate your support in the past. We always value your feedback. Any comments, suggestions, questions, anything you'd like to share with us, we're always open. We're always willing to listen. And there are several ways you can contact us. First off, you could go to our website and go to the About Us page. There's a form there you can fill out. You can also email us, and that address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can contact us through social media. We are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. That's all one word. Feel free to follow us there. We're obviously on Twitter, @Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us there. Mikey and I have our own personal Twitter accounts. Mike is at Mikey Geek, and I'm at TomTC Geek. Feel free to follow us there. And wherever you download or listen to our show, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, and yes, we are on iHeartRadio. Feel free to rate us. And if you have a couple of additional minutes, a review would be awesome as well. Thank you very much. Any final thoughts before we say goodnight, Gracie?
No, just thanks, everybody.
Just goodnight, Gracie.
I wonder if people will get that reference. Oh well. Thank you for listening once again, friends. It's very much appreciated. Thank you for the support. Until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook @The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter @Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,